Well, I feel really bad that Matt's not here today because we have a former Michigan football star, pro football player, and nobody got their high five on the way into class. I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to get out there and slap you. But today, we have Dhani Jones. And this semester, you've had the chance to see a pretty wide range of individuals that fit the definition of entrepreneur. But I dare say we might have been saving the best for last. Dhani might be the most memorable and entertaining guest that you will have this semester. Why? Because in addition to all of his accomplishments off the field and on the field, he has started philanthropies, he has started restaurants, he is the living, breathing embodiment of entrepreneur, and he is always starting something new. We've decided to sort of forego the traditional format today, which means that Dhani is just going to come out here and do his thing. Hopefully he will do it with all of you. Give him a large round of applause and welcome Dhani Jones to 407.
Hey. What's going on, everybody? Oh, man, are we low energy or high energy? All right. So what's going on, everybody? No, that's not see. Are we low energy or are we high energy? Okay. So what's going on, everybody? Hey. You guys gonna be a tough crowd all day for me or what? I just want to say thank you for having me up on stage. I'd like to say thank you, Thomas, for allowing me to be here, 407, and for being at the greatest university in the entire world. Michigan is my heart, it's my soul. You know, I woke up this morning fired up, 7:30 in the morning, jumped in the car at 7:45, realized I was out of gas. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna be late. I said, I better get here. So I was driving the whole way up here and I was just thinking about what I wanted to say to you. And I said to myself, I said, you talk in front of so many people, but what you must realize is that on a college campus, these students are far more intellectual than you'll ever imagine. The world is moving so fast and spinning so quick. Technology has evolved people's learning so fast that I couldn't even begin to keep up with what's going on in your mind, right? What's happening on your side, if you will, of the ball, right? I'm just a football player. What do I know? But this football player has had an interesting life. I've been a lot of different places. I've tried a lot of different things, and I'd surmise it by saying this. I'm not a gambler. I don't like to go to the casino, and the only time I do is when I go play baccarat. And that's large in part because I'm sort of the guy that self-proclaimed said that I'm going to be the first black James Bond. So if I'm going to be the first black James Bond, that means I got to be able to play baccarat. So I go and I always go play baccarat. And what I realized about this game, baccarat, and anybody that gambles knows, you know, I'm sure there's people that are poker players and blackjack and backgammon and all these craps players. Baccarat is the only game that if you win, you still got to pay the house. So you got to make a lot of money to play that game. So I realized that maybe I shouldn't always play that game. But when I went home and I said that I'm not a gambler, my girl said, you know what? You know, you play baccarat, so I know you have the spirit of it. But I do know this. You'll wager 100, you'll wager 500, you'll wager $1 million on a business. You'll hold a gun in your hand after jumping out of an airplane with a parachute and fire it into that safe haven. So you may not be a gambler, but you definitely take chances. And that's what entrepreneurship is all about. One of the most exciting opportunities that I had to take a chance was actually between a time that was kind of difficult for me, right? So I played in the league for 11 years. It was a fantastic opportunity to see the world, to see people, and to see the spirit of athleticism and competition at its finest, standing on some of the greatest fields where some of the greatest people had ever played. And I played for New York for 4 years, got drafted by the Giants, which is owned by a Michigan family, the Tisch family. And then I went to Philadelphia where I learned some valuable lessons. And I'd say that at the tail end of my time there, I met a guy named Tim Adams, who was my trainer, and he just got me to start thinking for myself. And I'd always thought that I really thought for myself, right? Here's a guy, a Montessori kid, ask a lot of questions, challenge a lot of authority, step outside the box. People would shoot me down. People would think I'm crazy, but I would just keep doing it. But he really kind of put me in position. He kind of put his hand out and told me to stop real fast and say, look, how do you want to play this game of football? Do you want to play it for yourself or you want to play it for others? Do you want to be the best player on the team? Do you want to start thinking and being more proactive in your approach to being a professional football player, or do you want to sort of just be reactive to the way that they're teaching you? And I said, well, I want to be the best. I said, well, you need to step outside the box and take a couple more chances. And that chance, which everybody takes in life, you have to be able to deal with the consequences that go with that. And so I took the chance. I actually didn't decide to train with the Eagles, and I moved back to California because I wanted to get closer to where I was born, and I wanted to kind of feel the environment. And next thing I knew, I got back, I played that season, and I got cut. Axed. You're fired. Done. It's a wrap. And so I went back to California, and it feels pretty good because you feel empowered, right? You feel like you just kind of stepped off the ledge and did what you wanted to do. But then you start realizing that it's not a gun that you're shooting through your parachute. You just took a cannonball and just launched it. You're just free falling, right? Regardless of all the things that you've thought about, regardless of all the businesses that you've dreamt about, and regardless of all the entrepreneurial spirit that you have, that moment of free fall is unlike any other. But things happen for a reason, I always like to say, or at least tut to the universe does. Guess nobody knows tut to the universe. And I got called by the Bengals. So I had an opportunity to go down there. And this is actually after I got picked up by the New Orleans Saints. And I went down there and I tried out for them, and I was on there. I went through a couple rounds of cuts, and then I got fired from there as well. So I got fired actually twice in the season. And then the Bengals decided to call me up. I went to a practice and I got picked up by their team. The risk that I'm talking about actually happened before I got picked up by the Saints. See, one of the reasons why the team didn't necessarily agree with my strategy is because I was doing some things by myself. I was doing a little bit more than what they thought I should do. I was thinking a little bit too much. I wasn't being a robot, right? I was being myself, which is an interesting way of approaching it. And I got a call from a production company to go do this TV show called Tackles the Globe. I don't know if anybody saw it. If you did, I hope you enjoyed it. And if you really enjoyed it, make sure you call the Travel Channel and make sure they get it back. And I did this sizzle tape. I went out to New York City, and this actually was like one day before I was going into the New Orleans training camp. And I did the sizzle tape, came back, went to New Orleans training camp, got released from there, got picked up for the Bengals. And then during the season, I was just thinking to myself, I really hope that sizzle tape gets picked up. Come on, someone pick it up. So that's not necessarily the biggest part of the gamble. The biggest part of the gamble was, at the end of that season, they said to me, we want you to go shoot a pilot for the show. Now, mind you, in the NFL, you have your seasons, you have your contracts, you have your games, you have your teams, but nothing is essentially guaranteed. So you're actually playing this game with a parachute with holes in it. You just hopefully catch a good surge of wind to keep you afloat. So they asked me, said, we want you to go shoot a pilot. And I was like, sure, I want to go shoot a pilot. And they're like, we want you to go play rugby. I was like, I don't know if that's such a good idea. I'm coming up for a new contract. You know, this is my first year. This is like me getting back in the game. You know, I'm building confidence in people. I'm on the Bengals. I'm doing well. I got out there. I was a captain. I need this new contract. And they're like, yeah, we want you to go shoot a pilot on rugby. I was like, well, what happens if I get hurt? I was like, what happens if they find out? I was like, what happens if, oh man, I got a big decision to make. They're like, well, we want you to go play rugby. Yeah, they said it 3 times. And I said, to them the same thing I just said to you 3 times. They're like, no, we want you to go play rugby. It's Pat Young. He's now over at BBC. And I was like, okay, you guys want me to go shoot this? Why not? That was the single biggest gamble that anybody in my position would have taken. To travel overseas to play a game that I've never played, to compete on the national level, with a contract of playing in the National Football League in the balance, and a potential show that, if anybody knows the television industry, is probably like 100 to 1. Why not? Hell, I carry a gun all the time, just shooting in the parachute, so I'm just free falling anyways. So I went over, I did it, and I actually fell off a horse, almost broke my nose, almost broke my part of my face, and almost injured my leg. And guess what? I had the best time of my life. And the show got picked up, contract got picked up, and everything works itself out. And I'm saying all this because, yeah, I'm not a gambler. But as you all sit in this room 407, and you all spend time with one another, come up with different ideas, and whether you're at the very beginning of what you want to do or whether you're at the end of what you've already done, you have to realize that in your gut, if the feeling of taking a chance is not there, this is not for you. But if the feeling of taking a chance is there, and that uncomfortable setting makes you feel so alive, then this is the most amazing journey you'll ever go on in your entire life. So, going back to, as I was saying before, on campus, in front of you, I know that I'm not nearly as smart as you are, but I might share the same feeling of chance with you. So I'm going to take a chance right now. I don't want to talk anymore, because I've got a lot of things that I can go different directions. I can talk about business. I can talk about travel. I can talk about meeting people overseas. I can talk about different sports I've played. I can talk about different people I've met. But I know, and this is my gamble, that all of you have essentially studied up on where I've been. Maybe you have some alternative questions as to what you want to know. And so I'd rather bet on you all's questions towards me. So if we could raise the house lights, I want someone or somebody or some group to ask me questions, because I know there's things that you all want to know from me versus me just telling you stuff I'd like you to know. So who's going to start? Yes, sir. You can shout it too. This auditorium is limestone rock. It's the most amazing auditorium I've been in.
Yeah, this might seem lame, but I'm really curious. So you said you woke up at 7:30, or like you left like 7:30, 7:45, something like that. And like you're worried about being late. So wait, where were you driving from? Because I just assumed that you'd be like in the Metro Detroit area, so it's not a far drive. So.
So that's a great question. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Oh.
As I said before, I played on New York. Did someone just like snicker and get upset at me living in Cincinnati? Is somebody upset about me living in Ohio? Is there a problem here? Because if you were to step foot on my property, all you would see are Michigan flags. And as you would see during the week, thank you, as you would see during the week going against any university in the entire world, that Michigan is all over the place, and you cannot step foot on my property with any such colors other than maize and blue. So that's just what it is. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio. It was the last team I played for, and the reason why I stayed there, and this falls into the world of where I am, is because I looked around at an amazing city that had a great opportunity. I looked around at a city that 10, 15 years ago in 2000 was essentially on fire. If anybody knows the history of Cincinnati, it wasn't necessarily the best. Racial tension at the highest, right? At 2000, there were these race riots that essentially burned down half the city. And when I got there in 2007, things were still a little bit dicey. There's still a little bit of a dark cloud over the city. But as I kind of looked around, I saw it as a place that was just starting to blossom. And as I was playing the game, I noticed that there's more Fortune 500 companies in Cincinnati than there are in Boston. In large part, probably none of you knew that. Cincinnati also has more art per capita than anywhere else in the country. Most of you probably don't even know that either. More giving per capita than most places in the country. And I can go down the laundry list. We've elected, well, most presidents have never won the election without Ohio. And there's a lot of history. And so seeing that surge back and seeing OTR, over the Rhine, start to come back and seeing the banks start to be developed, I realized that if I went to LA or if I went to San Francisco, if I went to New York, if I went to London, if I went to Australia, if I went to Shanghai, I'd go anywhere. I would just be a corner office, maybe a big corner office in another country, but I'd rather be a part of the foundation. I'd rather be a cornerstone. And I say to all of you, when you're thinking about business, do you want to just hold a corner office or do you want to be a part of a cornerstone? That's one of the most important decisions that you have to make when you start in a business. How big, how important, how integral is your idea to the overall infrastructure of America, to the world? Because we're not living in a domesticated society any longer. Everybody is just one moment away, or in my case, 3 hours and 45 minutes to the south. Another question.
Can you talk a little bit more about the transition from the NFL, what led you to start starting ventures after the fact, and then how your identity has changed over time? Because obviously there's a lot of players from the NFL who have a hard time transitioning from their professional sports career to an actual like real world life. And so can you talk about how that transition was and exactly how you then made that into starting businesses?
I think it's how you go into the National Football League. I think it's how you go into sports in the first place. I knew that going into the game of football that it wasn't going to be for long. I knew that. Matter of fact, when I was younger, at the age of 12, I told my parents that I wanted to be a pediatric neuroplastic surgeon. Now, if anybody knows what that is, raise your hand. Okay, cool. Thank God. We're at Michigan. That's what I'm talking about. So there's a certain guy that was a presidential candidate that I read all of his books by the time I was 10, and I really looked up to the things that he was about. No one got that? Okay. Obviously, none of you have been watching politics as of late. There's only one pediatric neurosurgeon that was up on stage, and I was into his policies before he got into the presidential election. That's besides the point. That's politics. So I read, I wanted to do that. And I wanted to kind of take on the world. See, the real reason I wanted to be a pediatric neuroplastic surgeon was because I'm an artist, right? I paint, I do photography, mixed media. That's what I studied here at Michigan. Actually, I designed my own major. I was in the East Quad. Anybody East Quad? Big shout out, all the East Quad. Anybody residential college in East Quad? That's what I'm talking about. You guys are the real deal. The rest of you guys, eh. So I was in East Quad, I was residential college, I was an artist, I like to go to class just like in my pajamas. That's how East Quad rolls. Maybe not now. Is it the same way?
Oh, it still rolls.
That's what I'm talking about. Okay, cool. But the one thing I realized, like if I wanted to be an artist, man, I couldn't go to Benihana's at Tokyo anymore and have like surf and turf. Because I didn't make any money until you die. So I was like, oh, okay, all right. So let me find something that's near and dear to my heart that I can do in an artistic way that can allow me to have some cash flow in my pocket so I can still go to Benihana's in Tokyo and have my surf and turf. So that's the real reason that I wanted to be a pediatric neuroplastic surgeon. So I always had that in the back of my mind. And yes, it is called Benihana's in Tokyo. It's not just called Benihana anymore, just to let you know. I always had in the back of my mind that the game would only be played for a certain amount of time. I mean, I was at practice talking about, my AP medical classes that I was in when I was in high school. Anybody from Maryland, Potomac? Anybody?
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, that's right. Go Bulldogs. Okay, so then when I was at Michigan, When I was here, I was always studying my medicine, and I was doing a minor in self-representation. So I was always keeping that in the back of my mind, and then when I was playing the game of football, I was thinking about what types of businesses I can start to think about. There was one guy, many of you probably know him, his name's Michael Strahan, and he said to me, he said, Dhani, as long as you say please and thank you and remember people's names for the most part, you know, someone's gonna help you along the way. Someone's gonna be there for you. So I always thought about relationships. I always thought about ideas. I always thought about how to iterate from the place that I stood into sort of the next world. But I caution you when you say that football is not the real world. Everybody that plays the game of football is a startup themselves. Think about it. When your parents buy your shoes and your shirt and your jersey and your pads and your helmet, that's a $500, $1,000 investment. Never mind all the different games that they travel to, and never mind all the gas, never mind all the food, never mind all the pain and suffering, the trips to the ER that parents have to pay for, not to imagine the increased amount of like health insurance because their kids probably getting hurt every now and then. That's friends and family round. Then you go to a university. They're paying for a scholarship. That's their Series A. That's a big ticket item. You're coming out of the gate. Oh, I'm going to University of Michigan. You know, I got a scholarship. That scholarship's worth, I don't know, we'll just say $100,000 every year, $400,000. I got food. It's all paid for, blah, blah, X, Y, and Z. Never mind the relationships. That comes at a certain value as well, that network, that, playing within the family, everything. That's Series A. Series B is going to the league. A big contract. I'm going to New York City. I'm going out to Miami, Florida. I'm going to San Francisco. I'm going to meet people from all over the place. Now, Series C, not a lot of people get there. That's your second contract. Boom. It's like second stage rocket. Anybody a rocket science major? Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Second stage rocket, right? 2 and 3 stage rocket, boom, boom. You know, it's just like you're just out of the stratosphere, right? Which, by the way, you saw Blue Origin, right? Great company, owned by a Michigan guy. You guys didn't know that? You do know that. Okay, some of you don't know that and need to check up and check yourself in terms of all the people in Michigan running the world right now. So that's transition. Transition is understanding what's going to happen along the way, but it's also understanding the life lessons that you've learned and your capabilities as you sort of evolve, right? Athletes are startups. Ideas become startups, become companies. You just match the two together. So you ask me, how did it happen? It was happening all along. Transition happened all along. Now, just like I talked about before, when I got released from Philadelphia, right? That feeling of free fall is still the same. But maybe I wasn't falling as fast because I had a lot of relationship, i.e. patches in the parachute, and less holes than some may have in order to make sure that I was able to stay afloat. And then you add ideas or you add air in order to keep yourself up. And then you hope, just like everybody else does in the world of entrepreneurship, that there's this big gust of wind that just takes you to the outer stratosphere. And then you have an IPO like most people want. So that's how the transition occurred. That's how I felt during it. And that's how I feel about it. Another question. Yeah.
With all the things you have going on in your life, like how do you stay motivated and like keep that feeling of free fall without ever getting complacent?
I stay motivated. That's that feeling. That's that gut.
How do you maintain that?
How do I maintain it? Do you see this energy right here? How do I maintain that energy? I maintain the energy by my curiosity. There's not a night I don't go to bed that I don't come up with a new idea and I don't write it down on the side table. There's not a day goes by that I don't take one step and look around and see something from a different perspective and see how I might be able to change it or adjust it or manage it in a different way. Anybody seen the movie Dead Poet Society? Oh, man, you guys doing all day. right? What did he do? He jumped up on top of the desk, right? Remember that scene? You saw it, right? He jumped up on top of the desk and talked about it's all about perspective. So how do I maintain the energy, the motivation? I have an ever-changing perspective, and I have a insatiable level of curiosity. Now, the only problem with that is oftentimes I have so many ideas that I have to step away from it for a moment. I gave somebody an example last night. Who drives stick shift? Thank you. Stick with real cars, man. I love electric cars, but there's something about the engine, right? Oh, man, it's so good. All right. Sorry. I love cars. All right, so anybody drives stick shift, old stick shift cars didn't have, what is it called, Tom? It's like auto sync? Is that what it's called? Huh? Synchro, right? So what happens is old school cars didn't have a synchro. So that means that you had to match the engine speed to the clutch in order for it to match, or else you'd grind the gears, right? Does that make sense? Now you have the synchro, what matches the speed, so that when you put it into gear, you don't grind the gear, right? So for me, I have all these gears just high RPM, just running. Those are my ideas. But sometimes I have to push in the clutch, step to the side and let it spin. And then find my way back into it. So how do I stay motivated? I keep that spirit within me, keep that attitude, I keep that perspective. But I also realize that even at the highest level, when you have the most amount of ideas, you have to step away, because even you have to take a fresh approach to yourself. And also surround yourself and be selfless to let go of some of your ideas. I was talking to Thomas about an idea. You take that. I got another idea. Someone's good in rocket science. Boom, I want to send CubeSats to rockets. Boom, you take that. I got another idea because I want to start, build another car company that has a loud engine. You take that. Right? You have to be selfless in your ideas. And that allows your motivation to increase as well. Because other people, if you sit in your own box, if you sit in your own room, you sit in your own chair by yourself, what good is that? Let the other people motivate you as well. One of my friends is doing a marathon. I'm doing a half marathon. And she said, I know you're doing a half marathon, but I was just wondering at mile 25, could you just show up and just run the last mile in? Anybody who's ran a marathon knows like the last 5 miles are the part that really hurt your body, right? You're almost running and your legs are just numb. She said, because this year I'm only running with one other person. So it's 2 people. She's like, the year before, I ran with 6. She's like, in a group of 6 people, there's always going to be someone with a positive attitude. Think about that for a second. There's always going to be someone with a positive attitude. That means there's always going to be someone that's motivated. That means there's always going to be someone that's going to give you a fresh idea and a fresh approach. There's always going to be someone out there that's going to keep you inspired. Add that jet fuel to your system when it might just be knocked down to 87 octane. I don't have time for 87 octane. It's efficient, but I need rocket fuel. But it burns fast, so I need a lot of it. One more question before she interviews me on this talk show.
So kind of a big theme that you've been talking about a lot is taking these risks and doing all these different things. I was wondering if you could speak to, when you have this new idea, how you move forward and kind of decide if that's a risk you want to take, or fire another bullet to keep with the motivation.
Cool. How do I decide whether an idea is a good idea? I think it's also looking at that same team and asking them, right? That's number one. Number two is risk assessment comes to what is the need within the marketplace. The way that we work with Key Capital is we co-architect companies with other Fortune 500 businesses. So if I'm looking at one bank with one idea, I need to make sure that there's 10 banks that need that same idea. So I'm able to mitigate risk over 10 different people versus just deal with one person as a customer, right? So first I'm going to check myself, then I'm going to check the people that are around me, then I'm going to check the opportunities as it relates to that idea with multiple clients. And then gut. There's this a recent article in Fast Company magazine. I don't know if anybody reads Fast Company. If you don't, you should. If you haven't, that's a problem. You can read you can read Harvard Business Review, which has some amazing articles as well. You can read Aeon, which is an interesting magazine. You can read Wired magazine. And they've all come out with these articles talking about gut. That's one of the biggest things that you need. That's one of the biggest litmus tests that most people ignore because you're not able to sort of quantify. You're not able to figure out what it actually is, right? It's that instinct. Believe it or not, there are other things going on in this world that you can't see, that you can't figure out. Fine. I don't care what religious background you have, what political affiliations you have. I don't care where you come from. I'm just letting you know that there's other things that are happening in the world, just what it is. And part of that is your gut. Can't explain it, doesn't make sense. But after you've gone through your checks and balances of yourself, of your people, of the potential opportunity, you have to go to your gut. Now, just like anything else, you might get burned along the way. But that's just a part of it. But at least you know that you checked all the boxes. And I would say the last part is my friend Doug Ullman. He runs Pelotonia. He always talks about A, B, and C, right? But he also talks about Q, right? And you all might call that pivot, but I like it better because it sounds cooler, A, B, C, Q. So you have you, your people, your potential, your gut, and then what's the Q? If all hell breaks loose and the idea completely fails and you've taken a chance because you wanted to do this, what is the way that I can get out of this? Or what could this be if it's not this? What could I be? What could I do that is not directly aligned with what it is, but there's some pieces, right? So if it's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what would 3, 4, 2, 5, 1 look like? So that's how I essentially evaluate it.
Are you ready for your Oprah moment now?
Oh, my moment! We get music for this or something?
Da, 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 da,
Okay, cool.
da.
Hey, how you doing? Good to see you, Don. Yeah, it's good. Hey.
Wow, good to have you. Good to have you.
Thanks.
When was the last time you cried, Dhani? Okay.
Last time I cried? Hold on, wait, I remember. I think it was during a movie.
Captain, my captain.
I think I did tear up a little bit during Dead Poets Society. I was wondering if there's another movie that I teared up. I tear up in the weirdest movies, right? I think I teared up in like Ant-Man.
Knowing you as I do, I'm not even remotely surprised by that answer. All right, you guys
I
are up.
did tear up in Ant-Man because it was like who saw Ant-Man? Right? Remember when like the daughter had like the pet ant? Right? That was kind of cool. Like that whole relationship with the family got back together. I think I teared up a little bit during that movie. I think I also teared up at like Mockingjay Part 2.
John, jump in or he'll keep reflecting.
I'm going to jump in.
You guys don't tear up at random movies? I tear up in these movies. I get sad.
Before you give everybody a
But
free
no,
car
it's
in the
not
Oprah
sad.
moment,
I get
I'm just gonna-
emotional. I get emotional in these movies. Oh, I was watching. Anybody see Jurassic World? Right? Yeah, emotional. These are good movies, man. These are like amazing movies. Like things happen to people.
All right,
I think you got kind of emotional with my sweaters when we were skiing a couple years
Your
ago.
sweater was terrible. That's why I was emotional with it.
All right, I'm going to
It was
hit.
really bad. It's really. I got a new sweater though.
Okay.
I did.
John,
I got
eyes on John.
Hey,
John's the other
who's
side of the
watching
ball.
the Masters? I got emotional when Ernie Els had that 6-putt.
All right,
That was terrible. Did you guys see that? Oh man, you saw it. Rocket Man. You saw that, right? I was so sad. I was like, what's up with Ernie, man?
All right, I'm going to drill you really hard now for
Okay.
entrepreneurship stuff, just
Got it.
because of that. Just because of that. Okay, so
Jason Day, come on, man.
one of the things you didn't mention that is actually pretty awesome is your work with QEY Capital. And so I'm going to ask you, just from the perspective, a lot of people here are very involved in entrepreneurship. They're looking at the news, they're reading the stories. Do you think there's a liquidity problem in late-stage capital? There's 35,000 companies now waiting for some sort of exit, an IPO. What are your thoughts on that?
I think number one, a lot of people are looking at companies and saying to themselves they don't necessarily want to go public. A lot of people are saying to themselves they'd rather keep their company private because they'd have a lot more control and they wouldn't have to deal with sort of the shareholder pressure and the board pressure. Uber is one of the biggest companies. It's a private company. They're trying to hold on for as long as they can before they go IPO because I don't think they want everybody else to have sort of dominion over their business. So is there a liquidity issue? I don't know. There's more dry powder or more money out there in the private markets than anybody has seen for the longest amount of time. Supposedly there's like last year there was I have it in my phone, $936 billion entered into the private marketplace for investing, and they're projected for this next upcoming year for 1.2 trillion. So when you think about numbers, and don't quote me on the exact numbers, you all studied them, but it's pretty close. When you think about numbers, most people, it's funny, I was with Procter & Gamble yesterday, and obviously they're a public company, but people are looking at the stock market and they're saying it's so volatile they'd rather enter the private market. So there's not necessarily a liquidity issue, maybe just some ideas are not so good.
Well, John, I think you found the clutch from crying at Ant-Man to liquidity issues. Go.
Okay, so my question for you is, why did you choose to go into more late-stage investing versus early-stage investing?
Well, I think what we do is a bit of a combination of both, right? Where some companies might be at a later stage because they're older businesses, we find new stage opportunities that can complement where they have not prioritized, right? So big companies that have been around for a long time that are quickly getting trumped by smaller businesses are now looking for entrepreneurial value or entrepreneurial spirit in order to allow their business to flourish and stay far ahead of the competition. But we also look at businesses that have been established. The hardest part of establishing any business is to decide between two people or one person or three people or five people. What's the equity stake in the business? What idea are we going to move forward on? It's like getting married. It's like I was telling somebody else. Who was I telling? Eric? I was telling. Where'd Eric go?
Eric's gone.
Oh, where'd he go?
Everybody's got jobs to, honey.
Sad. Okay. So, I was telling Eric about politics. It's like politics. He's like, well, you want to get involved in politics? I was like, no. It's like politics is like getting married. And it's like, it's cool to be the bride or the groom, but it's better to be the groomsman, right? So, you like that, right?
That's good.
None of you are close to getting married, I see. So that's where we like to play. We like to be able to work with those companies that are already established, that have essentially already established traction. They get that lift, and then we identify really those good teams that can provide that value add to the business that we're working with. As I said before, sometimes it's an early stage business that would be able to provide, as I say, late stage opportunity to a company that might be a little bit more archaic in business and strategy.
John, one from me. Hang on. So, Dhani, you happen to be a really incredibly...
So wait, I'm thinking like talk shows. Who would you be?
Who would I be?
Would you be like, what's it, late night?
Mean
what's
guy.
His name? The skeleton, what's his name?
Skeleton?
What's his name, Jeff? You're Jeff.
Okay. So, I
You
happen
guys
to...
never, what's late night with who? That man is awesome. Late with Craig Ferguson, he's the man, right? Yeah.
Later that same day. So you're a really philanthropically oriented guy. I mean, you give a lot of yourself and your time and to a ton of causes. A lot of people that are would-be entrepreneurs are of the win at all costs, stay focused on the prize, but that's not your MO. Can you talk a little bit about how your philanthropic activities influences your entrepreneurial mindset?
Yeah, you're right. You're not Jeff.
If
I
you
was
were
in-
a tree, what kind of tree would you be? I know you like
Me?
that question better. Yeah, see, you perked up.
An oak. An oak.
All right, Mighty
Japanese
Oak.
maple. Anybody play golf? I already asked that question?
Yeah.
No, I said it. Does anybody watch the Masters? It's different. I played golf with a guy that knew every single tree on the golf course. I thought that was so awesome. And it's related to the answer.
Okay.
Really,
So-
I'm interested to see this pivot.
No.
Really.
What's the cue?
Because golf, you know, like he and I would spend time playing golf, and he would know all these trees, and he'd say to me, you know what, there's something special about being able to spend time with people for 4 hours, you know, and walk the course and play these incredible courses and these holes, and you know, you play this game with this really, really small ball and on this big course, long stick. And anything can essentially happen, right? And so when I think about how you sort of create business, you also have to say to yourself, like, anything can happen, but just like on a golf course, because you're able to learn something about yourself and be able to provide value, you also can learn from other people that have been through situations and how they can provide value, right? So when I think about golf and when I think about business and I think about philanthropy, it's really not about yourself. It's about something that's greater than yourself, right? That's the game of golf and how it should be played. The game of golf is not meant to compete. It's not meant to sort of win. It's meant to sort of learn. And it's learning about yourself so that you can ultimately be better for others. And in that same sense of selflessness, philanthropy is a part of, or has been a part of my overall journey. You know, you guys are like, what's this bow tie he's wearing? He thinks he's a professor. You didn't like my accent? You have a problem with my accent? You want me to change it? My name is Jason Day. All right, Dhani Jones. Yes, I'm like this all the time.
And scene.
So this bow tie, I started wearing them to support my friend who had cancer. His name's Kunta Littlejohn. And he said, you know, if you want to be somebody, you got to rock a bow tie. And I looked at him like he was crazy, probably like you guys are looking at me. And I was like, what? I was like, I should wear a bow tie. He's like, yeah, if you want to be somebody, you got to rock a bow tie. I was like, I don't want to be whoever wears those bow ties. And I found out he had cancer, right? I found out my friend who was like, everybody's got, you know, he was big. He's a big guy, man. Like 6'2", 350. I mean, big. It's a big guy, but funny, right? He'd laugh at all my jokes. Probably the only person. Everybody thinks I got a dry sense of humor or something like that. So he said, if you want to be somebody, you got to rock a bow tie. I found out he had cancer, and I was like, I saw him because he was like 350, and he was down now to like 120. I was like, what's up with that? And I was like, I got to go put on a bow tie. So I immediately went to go put on a bow tie, and essentially my career changed in that moment. The trajectory essentially went askew. It was just completely new course. People were like, oh, there's the bow tie guy, there's bow tie guy, bow tie guy, bow tie guy, bow tie guy. Man. And in the beginning, it was a little bit more cumbersome because we're like, oh, you think you're a part of the Nation of Islam, or you think you're like Pee Wee Herman's cousin, you know, like you want to be like Count Chocula on, you know, Sesame Street. Like, I got all kinds of things. I was like, no, I'm actually wearing this bow tie to support my friend who has cancer. And so every time I would talk to someone and say that, it shut them down. And then, but I never put two and two together, right? I never put two and two together in terms of like this bow tie and how it's really for this cause. And so, nevertheless, my friend got better. He's back up at 350 pounds, loved Krispy Kreme. You can laugh because he loves Krispy Kreme. It's funny, we went to go box one time, and I had him out there with my trainer. He was dying. And he needed some motivation. I was like, look, I promise you, after we get done boxing, if you make it, Krispy Kreme and ice cream. But I tell you what, I've never seen a guy move so fast in my life. So he got better, and I never took the bow tie off. And People knew that, and it changed the entire dynamic. And so now with BowTie Cause, and we've had several bow ties on campus, event on Main. We have the Bo Schembechler bow tie that's at, what's it called? At the shops that are in town.
Emden?
Oh, Emden and what's next to Emden?
The other Emden?
At Emden. Victor's, yeah, kind of across. And so we've worked with over 200 different organizations around the country, everybody from JDRF to Elizabeth Glaser Pediatric AIDS Foundation. We've worked with Dignity Health. We worked with Henry Ford Hospital System. We've worked with different organizations. And with JDRF, we sold 100 bow ties and one dinner for 40 grand. With James Beard Foundation, we sold one bow tie for 10,000. But there's other organizations that have just bought bow ties and given away to their patrons. Why? And I think this is the most important piece, is because it's the story, more importantly than anything else, right? Stopping people in their tracks to really talk about and understand the things that are important to them, and the selflessness, in the same way that I talked about playing the game of golf, and as I think about the world of business. When people go into developing a big idea, when it's truly a big idea, they're thinking about how does it affect others? What's missing from our everyday life that I can help people find? You think about a company, what's it called, Skiplag? How many of you use Skiplag? If you don't, you're losing a lot of money on tickets that you probably should be getting for like 75% off, right? Everybody uses Hotel Tonight. If you're not using Hotel Tonight, you're getting ripped off from, hotel rooms. How many people use Uber? How many people use Airbnb? I can kind of go down the line. Some people probably start to use a company called BP, where you can sell your cars online and just bring another one. There's a lot of different companies that are out there that people are utilizing, and these platforms are creating this level field where it doesn't matter who you are or where you're from. It's creating an equal opportunity for all of us to really be able to see how we can become better as people. And so when I think about philanthropy, I think about how we can become better. And when I think about giving back, I think about the powerful stories of the people. And I think about entrepreneurship, I think about selflessness. And that's how they all match together.
And that's our time. You've wrapped up on a heavy note. Yeah, well, final thought. What's your final thought for everybody today? We got your last slide up there.
Well, so someone asked me the question, you asked me the question, who asked me the question about transitioning from the game? And I think this is important for transitioning from school. I think this is important from transitioning from a job. I think this is important in any sort of transition as you think about life, right? It's about regrouping, taking a moment, finding that center place. I think it's being able to sort of refine your focus, because sometimes things start to spin out of control and you have to step aside from that spinning wheel, if you will, push the clutch in and move to the side. And then it's about rewiring. And ultimately, you cannot rewire by yourself. If anybody has an old car, if anybody has an old house, if you ever tried to rewire it by yourself, it would take you forever. But if you found experts and people and family and friends in a community to help you do so, you'd be done in an instant. And so when you think about entrepreneurship, as I've said many times before, as I said today, having that selflessness, understanding it's not about you, it's about something bigger than yourself. Having that team of people that can rewire alongside with you and believing in your gut, you can be successful. And then we'll all be partying on top of the stage right here, rocking bow ties and crying to movies like, Dead Poet Society and Ant-Man.
And
you know
crying.
what? Huh?
And crying.
I cried in the Avengers, the Age of Ultron.
Dude, you're going to make me miss my plane. Okay, let's have a round of applause for Dhani.
Thanks, Nick. Success isn't measured by dollars. It isn't measured by position. It isn't measured by acknowledgement. It isn't measured by a lot of these things that we kind of worship and idolize. It's measured by